It's been a while. In fact, it's been over 2 years since I last uploaded on this channel, and I feel like just so much has happened. On a personal level, I not only got engaged, but we got married and we had a baby. That's crazy. And on a professional level, I feel like even more has happened. Since I last uploaded, so much has changed. I got a contract position at Riverside where I created a bunch of product tutorial videos for them. I ended up getting a full-time job at Superside where I was a senior video producer, and I ran their YouTube channel, made a bunch of ads for them, a bunch of other videos, and ended up running an entire video team. Then I quit that job and I joined as the director of video production and content strategy at HeyFriends, which is one of the largest YouTube agencies at the time and co-founded by one of my favorite YouTubers, Ali Abdaal. But then I quit that job and I ended up going full-time on my e-commerce business with my wife, which is Longboy. I'll link that in the description if you're interested. Might talk about that later on in this channel. Now, at the same time, I also did some freelance video work, and it went so well last year that it just kind of snowballed and kept building, and I ended up creating my own agency called LeadTube. And I got to work with a bunch of great clients. We got to launch a bunch of great YouTube channels, creating a ton of video content. And now I'm back here on my own YouTube channel. But you might be wondering why. So let's talk about why I left in the first place. Now, if you go back on my channel right now, you'll see that the last 50 videos or so, with a few exceptions, are all from my podcast MindMeld. Now, this was a project I did back in 2020 when that thing happened. Anyways, during this time, I was actually running a virtual reality startup. We were building software. I was creating VR cinemas for some of the biggest film festivals in the world, doing a lot of great traveling around the world to do this. But obviously, this thing in 2020 happened and it shut all of that down. So I really just needed something to do. I wasn't really looking for like a career change or anything. Even though I went to school for video production, it just made sense to do a podcast for me. So I did a video podcast, and you'll see that all of those videos on my channel, with a few exceptions, are from that podcast. Now, aside from the podcast, there are only 2 other videos that I published, which actually ended up becoming outlier videos, which just means that it got way more views than any of the podcast episodes really did. One of those videos was on Descript, which is something I'm actually using right now to record this video. And the video that I did was just a walkthrough of how I edited my podcast at the time using Descript. I published it in a Facebook group for Riverside podcasters, which I was using to record the podcast, and it caught the eye of the CEO of Riverside. So he messaged me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing some contract work, creating some walkthrough videos similar to what I did for the Descript video, but for his company. I agreed to do it, and I created, I think, like 10 videos at the time, one of which is still being used as their main help video for teaching your guests how to record. And then the other video was just an overall platform demo, and it's still one of the highest viewed videos on their channel to date, which is really, really cool. But what happened next was pretty much the catalyst for why I left. So I was publishing the podcast every single week without fail. I just, come hell or high water, I was gonna publish a podcast episode. So doing that, I think I published some of these Riverside videos on maybe Twitter or something, because one day I just got a random DM from the VP of marketing from a company called Superside. Now, if you don't know who Superside is, today they're like an AI-powered agency technically. They work with some really big enterprise companies, probably some software companies that you know. And at the time, they're more of a traditional agency, more of like a creative agency for graphic design, 3D, animation, things like that. Well, turns out that they wanted to run a YouTube channel. They wanted to expand their marketing to include some video, and they wanted to start off with YouTube. The VP of marketing asked me if I would come and work for them. And after some negotiation, I ended up just accepting this role as Superside. I got some equity, I got some great benefits, great pay, and a lot of the team was based in Toronto, where I live. So it was kind of a no-brainer, so I worked with them. But again, this is the catalyst for why I ended up leaving YouTube. Basically, when I started this full-time job, maybe a few weeks in, maybe a month, there was just a steep drop off on what I was publishing on my own channel. And the reason for this was very simple. It's probably what you might expect. All of my creative juices, all of my energy that I had for creating video went into Superside. Now, also, if you've ever had a full-time job, it's not just about the creative output, but it's all the work around the work, right? There's like meetings, there's Slack messages, there's documentation, there's so much just, quite honestly, crap that goes around with a full-time job that I just had no energy to publish my own videos. This was a full-time job, and in some cases, there's a little bit more than full-time hours. I'm not throwing shade at the company, it's a fantastic company, but I just couldn't do anything else. I was really focused on this job. And again, up until then, I've never actually had a full-time job. I was always an entrepreneur. I was always running my own businesses. And working this full-time job, as I mentioned, it just took a lot out of me because aside from just creating content, I ended up becoming a manager as well. So I was managing people. I was managing an entire video team. I was managing writers, animators, producers, you name it. And then we ended up becoming just the in-house video agency for Superside. So we were creating video ads like crazy. We were doing webinars and like live streams, you name it. We're doing so much. Now, this is where things kind of take a really funny turn because I was kind of getting in the groove at the company and I was actually thinking about starting the podcast back up. I was like, okay, I think I might be able to do this now. I'm going to go and just record a few episodes and see if I can build a little bit of a backlog again and I can publish this podcast again. So I was about to release these episodes, and this is where things get really funny. Now, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, probably too much time. But anyways, I ended up meeting this guy named Hunter Hammonds on Twitter, who at the time was just blowing up because he had this crazy idea of creating 12 productized services in 12 months, each getting to 100K MRR within the first month or two. And it was just wild. Like, he had some of the biggest productized services at the time. And because I was working at Superside, which is the largest productized service probably in the world right now, they're a massive company, I was obviously interested in productized services. It was a really interesting model. And I thought, okay, maybe I could do a podcast with this guy. Now, I always use the podcast as an excuse to be able to talk to people, which is one of the reasons I really want to get back into podcasting and why I really recommend younger people building their careers to do a podcast. It's amazing. So he agreed to do the podcast with me. I feel really bad because I never actually published this podcast episode, but he agreed to talk to me. And during this podcast, he told me that he would be starting a new productized service. At the time, he was doing short form content, I think design and maybe web development, something like that. But he was going to launch a new one that's all centered around YouTube. Not only that, but he told me that he would be partnering with one of my favorite YouTubers, Ali Abdaal. If you don't know who he is, definitely check him out on YouTube. His videos are awesome. And then after the podcast was finished, we talked a little bit about what I was doing at Superside. I mentioned I was doing video and I was focusing on YouTube, but then my priority shifted there and I had to do ads, but I really wanted to get back into YouTube. And I was doing a bunch of like YouTube education, doing some courses, because again, I wanted to get back here like last year. But then it just seemed like everything clicked. He realized that he's going to need someone to run this agency, and I was pretty well positioned to do so. So everything kind of just clicked, and I took a leap of faith to join this because I really just wanted to get back into the creator world. When I was at Superside, we were really focused on like enterprise marketing, and that was kind of getting stale to me. So I wanted to get back into like startup mode, and this seemed to be my way in. Now, joining this company was a huge eye-opener for me. In terms of business, I feel like I learned more in like 6 months than I had in the previous 6 years, and everything I learned in school, that's for sure. But it was wild because the way that he was running these businesses and launching them, it just blew my mind. Because he partnered with Ali, he was able to put out one tweet, one LinkedIn post, and I think within a week they had over $1 million in their CRM pipeline. So we just had the demand immediately, and it was really up to me to kind of build this company, building systems, building the team, doing sales calls even with all those people that signed up. And it was just really crazy for me to kind of go from 0 to 100 so quick. Because I was tasked with not only servicing the clients, but I was doing all the operations, building the systems, building templates, building SOPs, basically building the shell of this whole company, and it was just wild. Now, this was extremely exhilarating. Again, I think I learned more actually in the first 3 months than I had in the previous 6 years. But again, my creative juices were just drained. At this point, I couldn't even create videos. There's purely management. It was purely operations. It was purely all the stuff I didn't want to do, as opposed to what I'm doing here, which is all of just the creative stuff, right? So I was feeling a little bit drained, and I feel like I just needed a little bit of a break. And I actually hit a breaking point here. So it was during the fall heading into winter of the year 2023, where my e-commerce business that I'm still running right now with my wife just started blowing up. We started running ads, we hit product market fit, and this company was just going crazy. And we were doing all the fulfillment ourselves. We didn't use, and we still don't use, a third-party fulfillment center. We fulfill all of our own orders. So it came to this point where I was being drained by this agency, and it was just way too crazy for me to handle. It was growing like mad, and I had to make a really tough decision here. I'm gonna have to just take a back seat on the creator stuff and just focus on this e-commerce business. I need to be able to help my wife. She couldn't do this on her own. So I made the tough decision to quit this job. Now, it was a very tough decision for me. It was in the right industry. I had a fancy job title. I was getting paid really well, working with a pretty good team, great clients, you name it. Everything was there, but I just had to make that tough decision to just go my own way. Now, what happened next was not planned. And it's really crazy because looking back at what happened over the last year in 2024, I don't think I could even do it if I tried. I think what happened was, just like with Riverside and Superside, people just kind of knew what I did. They knew that I did video, and they knew that I was doing YouTube for this agency. I had done all these ads for Superside, which showed up on all these people's feeds. So people kind of just knew me as a video guy. And a bunch of company founders just reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do some video work for them. So one was this company called Boom, which is amazing. Great tool if you're doing video calls or conferences. Just makes your camera look super cool. So I did the walkthrough demo video for them. And then a friend of mine, Stephen Hakami, who runs Wizza, he asked me if I would want to do what I did with Superside, but for Wizza, and just create some YouTube videos for him. And at this point, I wasn't really even considering, I'm going to get back on my YouTube grind. So no, I can't do that. I was just thinking, okay, well, I have the time because now I just work for my e-commerce company. And what I found was not only was it getting well automated at this point, but it's also a seasonal business. We really focus on the winter season. So as the winter season was coming to an end last year, I think February, maybe March, I kind of had some more time on my hands, and I thought, why not? I'll make some videos for you guys. So then I worked basically as a freelance YouTuber for Wizza. Instead of them sponsoring my channel, I was creating content for their channel to grow the business, and it worked really well. They have some spectacular results, which I would love to talk about maybe in another video. But I was doing that on camera for them, and then behind the scenes, I did some YouTube consulting for another company called SaberSim. They're like a daily fantasy sports company, and again, they were using this to grow their business. But honestly, at the time, I didn't even really want to do this. I just wanted to work on my e-commerce brand and maybe get back on my YouTube grind. I want to get back on this channel much earlier. But the universe had other plans for me, because not only were people coming to me and asking me to do this, but I realized that I not only had the skills, but I had the experience from the past 5 years doing this to really make a good go at this. So maybe I could take some of the learnings from what I did with Superside, from Riverside even, everything I did with HeyFriends, from not only the content creation, but the business aspect, and create my own productized service. And I figured maybe I could actually do this on my own terms. Instead of working 40, 60, 80-hour weeks like I was when I was working full-time, maybe I could do this in a way where it's like a little bit of a lifestyle business where I can hire people to do a lot of the work on the back end for me, and I can now work 30 hours a week, 20 hours a week, and devote the other half of the time to the e-commerce brand. So now I can kind of do both. So what ended up really happening here was I just turned my freelance projects into a full-blown agency with a core productized offer. So what that means is that today we help businesses and personal brands grow on YouTube using organic content. Now, of course, we do other things. We've done YouTube ads, we've done commercials, product demos, webinars, you name it, tons of marketing materials. But the main thing here is growing businesses with YouTube, which finally brings me back to why I'm here on YouTube. Over the past 4 years since I started the podcast, I created videos for the Superside channel, for Riverside, for a dozen clients at HeyFriends with brands and businesses and content creators. I created so much content for other people that I just realized it is time for me to come back here on my own channel. And aside from just honing in my technical skills with top quality video production, if I do say so myself, I learned so much about YouTube growth and content strategy. I did just a ton of YouTube education over the last few years. I took Matt D'Avella's Master YouTube course. I did Ali Abdal's Part-Time YouTuber. I went through Sean Cannell's Video Ranking Academy. I went through an Amplify Views course. I did Nolan Molt's YouTube for Entrepreneurs workshop. And on top of all that, I watched probably hundreds of YouTube videos on YouTube strategy and devoured probably thousands of Twitter threads. So at this point, I really do consider myself a little bit of an expert on the subject. But the problem here is that if you looked at any of my social channels, especially my YouTube channel, you would never know this. So what I'm really doing here is just showing you that I know my stuff. I want to actually do it on my own. I want to dog food what I do at LeadTube. I want to grow my own brand. I want to connect with you and I want to share some really cool stuff. I have so much that I'm ready to share. And honestly, at the end of the day, this is really just a bit of a regret minimizing activity for me, because I know if I let another 5 years go on and I didn't try to grow my channel, I would just have so much regret. So I'm here, I'm doing this. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do here. I'm finally gonna put these creative juices back here on my own channel, creating content to connect with you. So here's what you can expect from this channel moving forward. Well, the first thing is I'm gonna be taking this really seriously. Not that I'm not gonna have fun with the content, I have some really fun things planned, but it just means I'm gonna treat my channel like I would treat any of my clients' channels. That means weekly consistent uploads, that means strategic and planned content, and that means I'm gonna be choosing some specific topics. Now I'm probably gonna keep all of my old content up here. You'll see random things like old drum covers, the podcast, of course. I have a VR short film here randomly that blew up. And I have some really outdated product walkthroughs and things like that. But I can now actually update some of this stuff. But as I mentioned earlier in this video, I learned a lot about how the YouTube algorithm actually works. So I'm gonna stick to my plan here. I'm gonna have very strategic content to really just grow my business, to be able to grow an audience of people who are actually interested in what I have to say. So that means keeping it in a pretty tight category here. So I will be talking about YouTube strategy, content creation, all these things I've learned over the past 5 years of creating content. Also how I use different tools in my workflow, Notion, Descript, Riverside. There's a lot more. There's a lot of really cool stuff. AI is now a thing since I uploaded. Crazy. So I basically just want to become a little bit of that like go-to software guy. I think is one of the niches I'm going to be thinking about here. So if you're not into like cool new tools or software or apps, then this channel might not be for you. But if you're like, oh yeah, that's a really cool tool, I never even heard about that, this channel is going to have a lot of that stuff. Because among my friends and family, I'm kind of that go-to geek where I kind of recommend stuff all the time, recommending different tools or apps to use. So I want to bring that onto YouTube because I think that works really well on this platform. So I have a lot of really cool, fun stuff planned there too. But one of the reasons I actually want to do this kind of recommendation style video is because one of the ways I want to monetize this channel is through affiliate revenue. Now, YouTube AdSense can be great if you get like billions of views, if you're like Mr. Beast or whatever. I don't know if I really want to rely on the YouTube algorithm and the YouTube AdSense machine that much. So there are other ways to monetize your channel. Of course, sponsors and affiliate is kind of like the next level of that. So I'll have some videos like that. But the main thing that I want to do to monetize this channel, and the main reason I'm back here, is again, to grow my business. Now, that means really right now anyways, growing LeadTube. So there's gonna be a lot of YouTube recommended content, YouTube algorithm and production and things like that, because what I'd love to do is to work with brands and personal brands who want to automate their YouTube channel. They want some help from an agency like mine. So I want to create this content that would be helpful for these people, and hopefully a small subset of these people will want to work with my company. So that's the main thing I want to do here, because again, I've been doing this for brands for the last 4 years now, and I see the power in it. And I'm like, why wouldn't I just be doing this for my own channel? So that's the main thing. I want to grow LeadTube using my YouTube channel. So if you got to this video and somehow you're all the way near the end of the video and you're like, oh, this Josh guy seems kind of cool, I wouldn't mind working with LeadTube, or at least learning a little bit more about what LeadTube does. Well, I'm gonna put a link in the description, so most of my videos will now have that. If you wanna work with my team, link will be there, we can chat and we can kind of go from there. But either way, thank you for coming this far along my journey here, learning a little bit more about me, what I've been doing since I last uploaded here. This is the next season. This is the chapter marker for the next season of my YouTube channel. So I hope to see you a lot more. I hope to see you in the comments, so I can actually connect with you, and maybe I'll have some kind of way to connect to like a newsletter or something, so we can stay connected off of YouTube as well. I'm also on Instagram and on X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn a little bit. I'll probably maybe respond to a LinkedIn message, but Instagram and X for sure. So let's stay connected. Hope you liked this video. If you didn't, I mean, that's fine. You can unsubscribe, because this is going to be very different. This is a whole new season of this channel. So hope to see you a lot more. Of course, you could subscribe to the channel so you get notified when I publish new videos. You can watch this video if you're into it. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video.